Welcome to the Norfolk UNordinary podcast. I'm your host, Dan Johnson. I've lived here in Norfolk County for over 40 years, and together today, we're going to hear from the unordinary people who make our small towns and countryside a great place to call home. This episode of Norfolk UNordinary is brought to you by Coco Cabana Chocolate Fudge Gourmet Cafe. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram as they're always posting pictures of new and creative sweet treats. When you drop into Coco Cabana, say hello to its owner, Dave Tank, who has been serving the Port Dover community since 1995. Say hello to me too. I try to start my day at Coco's with friendly conversation and a good cup of tea. Open 7 days a week year-round. Start your morning or fuel your afternoon with a hot coffee, tea, espresso, latte, and once you see it, you'll want to grab a little sweet piece of fudge from Coco Cabana, 16 Walker Street, Port Dover, Ontario. Eric Darcy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Much appreciated.
Right on. You're here, Eric, because I think you're rather unordinary. And so let's hear your story together. Eric, I noticed that it's just in my head, but it appears that you may be looking over at my bike, which is currently stationed on an indoor trainer. It's all ready for winter riding here in my office / studio / man cave, I think is what they might call it. Or sorry, pain cave. It's not man cave.
It's not even pain cave. There's actually a better term, which is building something a little more positive than being in pain.
Well,
pain is very negative, so we like to think of it as something else, and I'm blanking on the term.
Yes, we endurance athletes like to try to pretend that it doesn't hurt, but pain is the right adjective to describe what goes on an indoor bike trainer in January, February, and March. So looking forward to that. Eric, welcome. It's really awesome. Eric, you and I met, I think, a few years back. And Eric, you're, as a guest on this podcast, you're particularly interesting to me because you haven't really lived in Norfolk County your whole life. Like, this is not a place that you have always called home, but it is a place that you moved to recently. We're going to get into that and chat about that in a little bit. And we here in Norfolk County, the listeners to this podcast, are going to get an opportunity to hear from almost an outsider's perspective what is great about this county that you've experienced in just the few years that you've been here. And so I think this will be a good episode. Eric, I want to start with a couple weeks back, you and I did something together in Niagara Falls, Ontario.
Yes.
You and I completed. I don't think competed would be the right word.
No, we didn't compete, and we didn't complete together.
No, but
we started together.
We started together.
We started the whole journey together.
We started the journey together. We completed the Niagara Falls International Marathon, and this was more of like an end of the season fun thing. Certainly for me, and for you, you've had a busy year of endurance training and competition, and this was sort of an event that you had marked on your calendar probably a while back, and it was a bit challenging to get to the starting line, let alone the finish line for this one, for me and you, and maybe some different reasons, but between things going on in our personal lives, injuries, fatigue, all that kind of stuff, you and I both were determined to get to the starting line and have a fun day, and we did that. Eric, was it not the most beautiful race conditions maybe you've ever experienced at 8 o'clock when the race started? I don't know that I've ever sat at a starting line and just have been these are the absolute perfect and ideal conditions. It's middle of October. Wasn't it a great day? What do you think?
It was a gorgeous day. It was actually, for a fall marathon, it was actually, depending who you talk to, a few degrees higher than it typically would. I mean, I think it was 20, I think end of day it was by 22, 23, but, start of day was, low mid-teens, and it just perfect. The sun was out. The colors were great.
It's shameful to say, but I was literally annoyed by the sunrise because it was kind of right at eye level. And as we were heading south from downtown Niagara Falls down out sort of to Fort Erie, the sun was coming. It was pretty bright, right at eye level. And so I actually had the brim of my hat dipped down, trying to keep the sun out. Because I think sometimes mentally for me, the sun, the accompanying association with heat, I was trying to keep it out. But man, it was just a beautiful morning, right along the river, the Niagara River. It was awesome.
Gorgeous homes on one side.
Yeah.
The river on the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think actually if you were just 2 inches taller, it wouldn't have actually irritated you.
No, if I was taller, it would have been. Nah, anyway, we're not going to get into that. Eric, as the host, I get to make fun of the guest. The guest doesn't get to make fun of the host, or else.
I wasn't making fun. I was just, it was just a.
Yeah, you see, I
observation.
have editing control and authority. And so, anyway, Eric's a great guy. It's been really fun to hang out with Eric, do some running with him and training with him. He's a positive guy, but he's also real. When he suffers and is grumpy, he suffers and is grumpy. And when he's in a great mood and cracking jokes, he's great to be around either way. It's been awesome getting to know you and hang out with you. So Eric, just starting out here, before we get into some of your accomplishments and some of the things that I think make you unordinary and worthy to be a guest on the show for the Norfolk County listener, start out with a little bit where are you from? I mentioned earlier you're not born and raised here in Norfolk County, so when you start to tell us you're from about as opposite of Norfolk County kind of real estate as possible. So tell us about where you grew up.
So born, raised Toronto. So definitely, a little bit different than small town, but
for our Toronto listeners, where in Toronto? It's not going to help me, but for Toronto people,
for anybody listening in Toronto, it was spent some time down in just outside the beaches along the bluffs, so it's kind of Scarborough way. Spent 2 years when I was younger in Ottawa, and then moved back into the Yonge and Lawrence area, and spent a fair amount of time there until I kind of meandered my way away from home. And from there, I kind of in and out of the city, both East End, West End, heading out towards Oshawa, and then out towards Kitchener, and then back, and then Stony Creek. And so I started making my way back over here, when I hit Stony Creek, and then moved back to Toronto. And then it's past about 15 years spent in Mississauga.
Nice. So GTA. It's pretty much born, raised,
Spent most of my time there.
You were shaped, influenced there. You became a man there. Matured, immatured, whatever. And when is
yes.
Yeah, okay, so growing up in the city, what did you always just think about the country that maybe you're now realizing is totally bogus or is totally true?
Well, it's totally true.
Yeah,
and there's tractors. Tractors are your is your rush hour.
Farmers feed cities, right?
Absolutely, 100% they do.
Yeah, and so was the country somewhere that you retreated to? Did you go to camps when you were a kid? Did you go to camping?
The funny thing is I'm not a camping kid. I mean, I did a yearly trip with family. We'd go out to Sandbanks or one of the provincial parks or similar, and we would do a family gathering once a year, and it was great. And then life, you kind of grow up, things kind of change in your life. And but I've never been a big kind of camping but what I always have enjoyed is actually getting out and doing drives in the country and doing that sort of thing. Kind of going, small town living, that must be kind of fun. And then you kind of go, yeah, but then I'd miss this, and this.
Right.
And
right.
So, yeah, a lot of it is still, kind of in that there's certain things, but properly organized, there's not a hope that I would ever move back into the city.
Really?
I love it here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Love it. Yeah, I think growing up in the country, it's the opposite. It's when we would go to the city so when I was a teenager, it might be to go to a movie, might be to go to Lime Ridge Mall to go shopping.
Ooh,
it might be, to get to East Side Mario's or somewhere right? Something like that. Something a bit more mainstream. I mean, we would go and then it'd be we would talk as teenagers and be like, who would live here? This is great to come to, but I mean, why, right? And so it's interesting, but if I was born and raised in the city, I would probably think the same. It's just culture, right? Develops, you're influenced by it, shaped by it. You don't really know anything different. But your comment is now that you have had a taste of both, you like the idea of being able to get into the city for what you need and then getting back out to your small town, back out in the countryside, especially for what you do, Eric. As a run coach, a triathlon coach, so a swim, bike, and run coach is what you do for a living. Your company is called Limitless Endurance Coaching, and you have another associate coach with you. You're also a race director with 5 Peaks Trail, and Eric, you get to have fun and play for a living. You have a career, I guess maybe I want, and in that
a career that a lot of people want.
Yeah, you get to run, bike, and swim, and all that comes with it, and coach. That's amazing, and people like me are thankful for guys like you in doing that. So back to a little bit maybe to your early life. So after high school and that, tell us a little bit about your education and training, and then I know that you've shared with me there was sort of a period in your life where the running thing just was like a flip that was switched on. It hadn't necessarily been there from your childhood and your youth, but it was more of a light switch that turned on. Once you got into it, then there was just sort of that was the first domino, and then into the gym and whatnot. So tell us a little bit about your journey from your high school days into getting into running, and then on and into life and where you are today.
So most of that is true, but going back to when I was a kid, so I grew up late 70s, 80s, before internet, before, anything like that. I didn't even grow up with much of a TV, it was once in a while type, it was a special treat type thing. So I spent most of my time riding my bike, and, you ride to your friends, or you go skateboarding. I did cross country through grade school up until grade 7 and 8, I believe. And then, as you said, a switch went on, and it went off. It's called high school. And high school, your thoughts are a little bit different. Sleep and
priority shift, interest shift. Yeah.
And then high school, I was never really athletic. Although many years later, I sit here and kind of go, I wish I'd stuck with the cross country running, because it's so close to trail running, which we'll talk a little bit more. But I absolutely, I sit back and I kind of, oh gosh, I wish I had done that or stuck with it. Swimming was one of those things I just couldn't stand. I did everything possible to get out of swim class at school, and but definitely not an athletic. I was not, that guy on the football team or going to play hockey. I don't know if I could still skate. That's how Canadian I am. Or un-Canadian, I guess. But, after high school, I spent a lot of time working. I went to Ryerson, did night school courses, got my business degree, and kind of went through all that. But I spent, right through my 20s, early 30s working. Worked with my brother, and had a great time, but it was very sedentary life. Didn't do very much. I was a smoker. I did drink. I did enjoy myself a fair amount. So the lifestyle I lead now is quite different. Through all these times, up until I was, I guess, about 33, 34. So about, carry the one. But, a number of years ago, let's go with that. I kind of decided to just kind of give up the smoking. I knew somebody, or I was visiting somebody in the hospital who's going through cancer at the time, and seeing some of these people in the cancer ward, it was a nice wake-up call. So gave up the smoking, started changing my eating, and so all these little things changed. Ex-girlfriend became ex-girlfriend, then started getting into the gym, and from there it just kind of snowballed. Ended up meeting Sue, who is now my wife. She was my spin instructor, got me into teaching it, and it just snowballed.
Wait, she was your cycling instructor?
I know.
Didn't you? I would imagine you would be that guy in class just annoying everybody with your cynicism and sarcasm and
she says,
grumpiness.
My gosh, who's that guy in the back row?
Oh, he's just so attractive.
That's exactly what she said.
Right. He's everything that's wrong for me, and I
can fix him.
No, that's great. I've you know what? I have met your wife now. I think I've met her one time that wasn't in a competition. The other two times I've met her, she's been on course. She does photography. And she does photography in sort of running events, trail racing and marathons and whatnot. And so a couple times I've met her, I've said, hi, Sue. And she's got her locked into her camera. So she's like, hi, but she doesn't know who it was, right? And then I met her once, and I think outside of a coffee shop here in Port Dover. And man, she's really sweet. She seems really sweet. She's really kind, and she also looks like she must enjoy humor to be with you, Eric.
Oh yeah, she does.
Yes, yeah.
That's the only reason we're together. She appreciates my humor.
Wonderful. I have a question for you. So, Eric, you are a pretty accomplished endurance athlete, and so for the listeners who may not know, what I mean by endurance athlete, I mean crazy people like us who like to just do stuff over and over again for a long period of time, whether that's swimming, biking, running, hiking, walking, and there's other things as well. Eric, you enjoy endurance athlete. So I'm curious to know. So I'm an Ironman triathlete as well. And one of the things that was very formative for me looking back was like when I was a little kid on NBC, middle of October every year on a Saturday or a Sunday, whatever it was, I would stumble upon this like hour-long program that was giving the race report, the coverage, and back in the mid 1990s, the coverage was terrible, but it was the coverage of the Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii, and as a young guy, man, I was just like, what is this? At the time, it was like the Germans were the primary dominators in the sport, and these guys, their physique. The women as well, like just their drive, the endurance, the pain, the suffering, the heat, all the story of Ironman triathlon. As a kid, I was like, man, I want to do that one day. But I was also like, not in any way realistic. I was more of, it's like a kid who sees an astronaut on the moon, like, I'm going to be an astronaut one day. Do you have any?
You still have time.
Yeah,
You're
I
still
do.
Young enough.
I do. Do you have any stories like that from when you were a kid that looking back may have been like a bit of a draw or drew you into endurance sports?
I don't want to say I don't. I can't really sit there and say, oh my gosh. But there are a couple of things that always kind of sit in my head, and as I'm out for doing a long run or anything like that. But I had a family friend, and I remember he ran New York Marathon back in late 70s.
Okay.
And he had a sweet pair of Nike, gosh, whatever they were. I can't remember which ones they were.
Yeah.
But, they were the latest and greatest in running shoes. And I thought those were the coolest shoes. And the fact that, he just ran for hours, I thought it was just really cool.
Right.
So it wasn't anything that really kind of clicked the switch and made me think, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do.
Right.
And the other piece was just some fiction book I was reading a number of years ago. And it was really just about some guy and a girl going out for a run through Central Park and solving whatever it was, world issues or a crime or whatever it was. But it's just the fact that, just how they described the run. And I thought, that just sounds incredible. I would love to do that. And so, there's just a couple little things that I sit in the back of my head once in a while, kind of go, I actually get to do this. And it's actually almost as fun as they made it sound.
Right.
It's even more fun. It's really
awesome, man. So, again, just before we get into some of your endurance athlete accomplishments, I have a question for the listener who's hearing about a guy here, Eric, who, it's pretty awesome that you just sort of openly shared the fact that, like there were some lifestyle choices that were, not the healthiest, and you sort of had some moments of recognizing like, hey, where's my life going to go, right? And I have control over that. I think a lot of people in Norfolk County are kind of in that situation, right? It's like they have access to, a county with all kinds of opportunities to do things in the area of fitness. And fitness is one component of your health, right? It's not all of it, but like, emotional fitness, mental fitness, and all that stuff, right? Our bodies are more, it's even spiritual fitness. Like our bodies are more than just a glob of cells. But that glob of cells, the fitter it is, right? The more it's going to work for the most part. So if the listener here is wondering, like what is it about a guy like Eric or guys like us or women like us who, just take that step and like, what is it for you that helps, gets that drive going, keeps you, you keep going on a daily basis, that drive, or just like, what is it, Eric, that might help the listener who's maybe looking or hearing or a bit inspired or maybe even feeling a little bit guilty or lazy and wants to, is well-intentioned, but just hasn't quite been able to make that step, or maybe they've taken the step, but then they've fallen back after a little bit. like the January fitness kick, right? Where everyone sets the resolutions. How do you move people from that to like an actual consistent life of taking care of their health?
Well, for me, like I said, it was just going to the gym was that initial step, and that really kind of snowballed, and I kind of floundered and did, whatever I felt like. There was no consistency in, okay, we're going to build up towards something. It was just going out and doing stuff. So it was 8 days a week at the gym doing cycling classes, which means, yes, there were days where I was doing two classes a day and stuff like that. And then, eventually, as you learn more, that, that's not necessarily a healthy thing to do, or a way to advance any sort of growth that you'd like in the sport. But the thing that kind of keeps driving is the fact that my group of friends have changed from 15, 20 years ago, where it was about, let's post as many memes, not that that was really in existence back then, but, that style, that sort of thing on Facebook, and talking about let's go drinking, let's go doing this, to let's go for a run. It was more, the memes changed throughout the years. So really my friends changed. Obviously I still have a lot of those friends from back then, but seeing the daily reminders of friends going out and running or swimming or biking and keeping active or doing things with their family, it's a big one for me. It's also, I have friends who are not as active, and you see their health is not optimal.
Right.
And so that's a drive for me as well. It's like, okay, I don't want to put myself in a position like that.
Right.
I enjoy what I can get out of my life right now with the body that I have. Yeah. And I'd like to be able to continue doing this for another long, long time. Love it. I don't really want to kind of ever step back. I mean, at one point I was, 40 pounds heavier. And like I said, I smoked and I drank, and my food choices, not always great right now, but it's, they were a lot worse back then. And I just don't want my lifestyle to kind of ever go back that way. And so there's a lot of that kind of drives me forward. And there's also the next season. It's like, oh, I've got all these new goals. So that's a huge one. So I've always got something in the works for the following month, year, whatever it happens to be.
Nice. Now, Eric, there's also, I love everything you shared. I echo it. I affirm it. Those are some of the same like external motivators, right, that help to internally move you, right? But it, as well, my experience is like, I just like to run.
Well, there's that too.
And like, I don't even know how to, like, I couldn't parse that sentence out in like a scientific way or a logical way. But what I more mean is like, when I'm out running, if someone said, why do you like to do this? I would say, I don't know. My body just likes it. Like, right? There's just something like, I just like it. And now not everyone would love that, right? That's not everyone's cup of tea. I'm a tea drinker, so that was not a pun, but for me, it sounded like a pun as I was saying it. But, I just really like it. So there's just that sort of, I think the body was designed to move, right? And if the average person just, puts it into their routine, I think that they would generally like those things that maybe right now they think, I would never like that. I hate that. I hate the... No, I think you actually would like it. I think there's that, obviously physiologically, we know there are things going on in the brain, healthy things going on when you put physical stress on your body that you can manage, right? And if you incrementally get into running or biking or swimming or trail running or trail hiking or walking, like, I think there's a pathway for anyone into really, really enjoying living a physically active lifestyle. And like Norfolk County, to maybe segue back into Norfolk a little bit, isn't this like just literally an amazing spot to do that?
It's a perfect playing ground.
So tell me a little bit about that. As you've moved here to Port Dover, you moved here in 2019?
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
exactly 2 years ago.
I think you and I ran into each other maybe on Strava. Strava is an online community for the listener who may not know. Strava is an online community you can register to. It's almost like Facebook for the fitness community, and you can track your run workouts or your bike workouts or your walks, and you post it in this sort of online social networking community. And so I was looking for people to run, bike, or swim with in around the same time that Eric moved to Port Dover. I was training for mid-distance triathlon at the time and building toward doing my first Ironman. And lo and behold, I saw this Eric guy who was running around Port Dover and Waterford, and I was like, hey, let's get together and connect. And I think you drove up to Waterford once, and we went on our first run together. And I believe it was like middle of winter, and you showed up with like shorts. And I was like, now I'm skinny and thin, and so I'm always cold. I'm always cold from no, Eric. Sorry. Not that you're not skinny and thin, but I am particularly skinny and thin, and I am cold from like late August until, no, maybe not. I'm still warm in late August. Mid-September to like April or May.
It was 18 degrees the other day. We went out for a run and he was in tights and a jacket and bundled up for minus 18.
Yeah, and so when Eric pulled up in the driveway, I was like, oh, this guy's a serious runner. He's one of these macho guys that, you know, well, it's not cold out. What are you talking about? But no, it was great. And, you know, we ran through the trails in Waterford over the Black Bridge, and I was like, hey, where do you want to run? You're like, I don't know. I said, cool. Okay, I'll take you for a tour around Waterford. And we did that. Tell me a little bit about your experience as you've gotten out and gotten to see, you know, the back roads of Norfolk County or just the places, the towns and whatnot. You do very long bike rides. So, I mean, you can get pretty far in Norfolk County, leaving from Port Dover where you live. You can get pretty far. And, yeah, tell me about your experience on these roads here in Norfolk.
I mean, the roads are, well, for me coming from Mississauga, where I was used to either having to fight traffic for the first half hour, 45 minutes to get out of town. And then
I couldn't imagine having the perseverance to do that. I would just be like, I'd have to drive somewhere and then get on my bike. Like, I don't know how but I guess it's just normal for you, right? You just do it.
And I would do that sometimes too, where it was just, when it would just get too busy, I would just throw my bike in the back of the car and, you know, go somewhere. Here, it's great. I just roll out of my front door and I can hit any direction, and it's quiet roads, relatively quiet. You know, some of them have got the shoulder for bikes and others don't, but the drivers, for the most part, are, you know, really, they're considerate, which is great. But yeah, I mean, I've gone, you know, past Long Point, heading out that way. I've meandered my way pretty much any direction, about 100K each direction.
Yeah.
You know, headed out to Dunville and had some fun that way. But yeah, there's just, the roads are just incredible for riding.
Mm-hmm.
They're quiet. I mean, I can get out on a Sunday morning for a ride and, you know, I don't see a car for the first 45K. Awesome.
Awesome. It's a beautiful place. Eric, I want to talk a little bit about your endurance athlete, some of your accomplishments, things like that. So, and we want to do this so that the listener can, you know, hopefully be encouraged and inspired a little bit, but also to, it's an important part to celebrate some of these accomplishments. Eric, I took a screenshot of a newspaper article a couple weeks ago and sent it to you, and I said, look at this fake news. Look what gets in the print these days. And it was, you know, I shared it with you jokingly, but it was an article about you, and it was in the Port Dover Maple Leaf.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was, Eric, you are a Canada man. I believe that is the probably registered, trademarked descriptor of someone who finishes. What was the name of the event?
Actually, the event is called Canada Man, Canada Woman.
Canada Man, Canada Woman, and it's an event held in east of Sherbrooke, Quebec, in Frontenac.
Lac Mégantic.
Okay, all right. And this event is an iron distance event, so that's long course triathlon. It's a 3.8 kilometer swim, followed by a 180 kilometer bike, and then a marathon run, which is 42.2K. And Eric, I'm looking at your Strava file here, and in the bike ride alone, so after an hour and 14 minutes of swimming, starting at, what was it, 4:30 in the morning?
4:30 in the morning.
Oh, so a pitch black swim.
Isn't yeah, the sun was starting to come up, like, you know.
Yeah, this was July 3rd, right? So it was the
height of the, but I mean, you know, still half an hour in the dark.
Half an hour in the dark, and there was, I see here around 3,000 meters of elevation. Okay, so can you give me an idea of, over that 180 kilometer bike ride, how much climbing is that? How much uphill is that?
It's a lot.
How many CN Towers would that be?
Carry you're looking about 5 CN towers. So CN tower is about 553, give or take a meter here or there. And I can't remember if that includes the antenna, but that's climbing the CN tower 5 times.
All right, on a bicycle.
On a bicycle.
After swimming for an hour and 14, 180-kilometer ride, and then Eric, on the marathon run, this was a nice downhill run, right? Nice and easy.
It was super easy.
You were wearing rollerblades, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I had
No.
people carrying me.
No, I believe that this was trail.
So the first 5K is on trail, then your next 17K, I believe, was on road, and then we kind of wrap up the rest of it on trail with a little bit of road. With your last 9 kilometers, climbing up towards an observatory, and that climb had 1,200 meters of elevation.
1,200 meters of elevation at the end. So like was this a 16-hour? What were you, how many
16
hours? So your 14th, 15th, and 16th hours when you're running this marathon, your 15th and 16th hours were literally ascending vertically to an observatory finish. Eric, this is amazing. Like, congratulations. I think that's so cool. I've done 2 Ironmans of the same distance, but not anywhere close to that elevation. Congratulations. That's pretty amazing accomplishment. Now, Eric, you just woke up the day before and just said, I'm going to do this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which is, no, not at all. You're pretty devoted to this. And tell us a little bit about the daily grind.
So Canada Man has been around for 5-6 years. 2016, I think, was the first year. I can't remember. It was on my radar right from the get-go because I love the concept. I've done a few Ironmans in the past, and it was fun. Kind of fun, I guess, in a sick kind of way. Yes. But they were fun experiences. But the Canada Man just had that little bit of an extreme aspect to it, which I loved, which was the climbing. And I think my Garmin file was off, so I think they touted as 2,500 meters. But I'll accept the 3,300. I like that. But so it'd been on my radar, and I just kind of, it never worked out. Timing never worked out. And last year, one of my athletes and co-coach, Becky, she did it, and I was following along and went, I really got to do this. And so last year I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to sign up. As soon as it opened, I think I was emailing them almost on a daily basis. Is it open yet? Is it open yet? Is it open? Because I didn't want to miss out. Mm-hmm. I had the drive, I had the want to do it, which, for doing any sort of long distance, you need that internal drive. It can't just be, oh, that looks like fun, mm-hmm. because there are going to be days which were not enjoyable.
Right.
It was getting up at 5:00 in the morning. It was, let's go. We're going to go ride 180K, and it's going to be all uphill both ways. So you really needed that drive, and I had it. And so, I signed up, and I was like, okay, I've got 7 months to kind of get my act together. And fortunately, I had a good base.
Nice. And you had a good coach yourself, right?
Actually, I didn't coach myself. I actually hired somebody.
Wow. That sounds like a wise thing to do, Eric.
It is a very wise thing to do. For a coach to hire a coach is a very smart thing to do.
Right.
Because I could either coach myself into the ground,
right,
or I could just be too easy and the finish line just becomes that much more difficult. So, awesome. My loving wife also said that, if you're going to do this, as well as another event that I had a month later, that I had to get a coach. Otherwise, she knows me well enough to know that it would have made life a little bit difficult. So I hired somebody who I've known for a number of years. She's coached me before, so phenomenal relationship.
Awesome.
Which is, which makes the whole experience that much more enjoyable.
Absolutely.
So it has been a long kind of process to kind of get to that start line. And there was a lot of mornings where, like I said, and I think you were there for a couple of them in the afternoon on the bike, where it's just like, I just didn't want to be out any longer.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I think getting into a fitness community it's just so fun. Like it's awesome. It makes the kilometers go by much quicker, much more enjoyable. And if you're a competitor, hey, you get someone to compete with, someone to push you. If you're out for social aspect or just to get fit, you're a sedentary lifestyle, there's that social aspect as well. It's great. And those things help push you along the way. And at the same time, if you're a type A driven competitor and you have specific goals and you want to be a competitor within sport, endurance sport, and you just want to do it on your own, you can do that too if you want, right? And right. So Eric, I just want to shift the conversation a little bit to, outside of some of these endurance things you do, I think what else is unordinary about you is, you contribute to the community to helping people through your occupation as a coach and as a race director as well. So as a race director, you work with Five Peaks. Help me say it right. What's the official title of that?
Five Peaks Trail Running Series.
Five Peaks Trail Running Series. Very good. I got to do a couple of those events this summer. My son, who is 6 years old, he was 5 when he did the race. He did the 3-kilometer uphill, downhill run at Kelso Conservation Area. And we did that together, and I couldn't believe it. My 6-year-old had no problem passing 12 and 14-year-olds up the mountain, and I had to hold his hand and keep him from falling because he was trying to run down the mountain so fast, twists and turns. He had no concept of like twists and turns. He would have fallen right off the side of the mountain and into the shrubbery and whatnot. And so we just had a great time together. And Eric, Five Peaks Trail Running Series, and Eric as the race director, I think this business is awesome in what they put on. There was hundreds and hundreds of competitors at these events. Some of them were competitive. I would say the majority are just your maybe average Joe, average Jane kind of people who like to be in the forest, like to be in the trail, have gotten into trail running. And I think it's great that this series is giving runners like us something fun to do 5 times a year, right? There's 5 races, 5 events in that series. And I think you've got more coming out next year as well, including potentially getting some more kinds of events running in triathlon here in Norfolk County in the years ahead, which I think is awesome too. And
actually, one coming up in January.
Yeah, what's that event? That's a Turkey Point, right?
So that's a Turkey Point. So that's actually under another company that I own called Crazy Cat Adventures, and it's over at it's actually over at Long Point Eco, and it's called Polar Pause, and it's a winter trail running. It's a 5, 10, and 25K event.
What's the date?
January 21.
I guess I'm gonna have to come and do it, right, Eric?
That'd probably be a really good idea.
That'd be a really good idea.
And bring
nice.
your friends.
Bring my friends. Bring my kids. Awesome. I've got some new. I was telling you the other day about trying to make a choice on trail shoes, and so I ordered the Salomon Speed Cross 5s, and so they should be arriving today or tomorrow. Pretty excited.
You should never make a choice. Just buy multiple pairs.
Well, yeah, I already bought a La Sportiva was the brand I bought, and they came and they were like 8 sizes too small. They felt like, I was like, who on earth could get their feet in these? So I sent them back, and I'm going to give these ones a shot. I looked into the Hoka Speed Goats too as well that you recommended, but I got the Gore-Tex, the Salomon, the Gore-Tex, so that, again, I'm small and I get cold, so I figured my feet will be warm. And yeah, so for those Norfolk County residents, keep an eye open to Eric Darcy. You can find him on Facebook. You can find the Five Peaks Trail Running Series on Facebook, and then also Eric as a coach with Limitless Endurance Coaching. I see you've got your hat on right now. Some of your, I love your logo and your Limitless Endurance Coaching, your hat, your clothing, and stuff like that. It's awesome. Eric, just getting back to Norfolk County as we wrap up our time here together. What is it about Norfolk County that makes it a place that you've decided to call home? I mean, you just said it's a place you might never leave now. Like, give me some of the adjectives or some of the things that you would just say are making it a great place to be.
Well, like I said, I mean, on a training perspective, I mean, it checks off all the boxes. You know, you've got the Lynn Valley Trail, you've got the lake to swim in, you've got all the open roads. You've got the Annalise Carr Recreation up in a swimming pool up in
Simcoe.
Yeah. But a lot of it for me, right from the get-go, I mean, the first day I kind of came into town, I had to do something here before we even had the house. And I met Scott from North Shore Cycle, first person I met in town. Best person to meet.
Yeah.
Because he's heavily involved in the running, cycling, triathlon community, swimmer. So it was just the perfect introduction to all the even just as amazing people in town. So, I've had the pleasure of meeting all sorts of people through the running and the cycling. And so, the community, especially the direct community that I'm involved with the runners and cyclists, the athletes, it's great because it really opened up a door, and it was able to pick up the phone and say, hey, let's go ahead and do something. And, I could normally find somebody to go and play with.
Yeah.
And even going beyond the athletic side of things, just as a community of people, a small town, it's great because, everybody's there to help. I've got incredible neighbors. They're thoughtful. They're helpful. There's an issue. Hey, we'll be right there. We'll help you out. And I've got a ladder. I've got whatever you need. So there's that, which, both Sue and I absolutely love. It's what, and it's not to slam big cities, but I find it's one of those things that is missing
Sure.
in the big cities. And I came from a condo as well. So that makes it even that much more difficult, even though, your walls are adjoining, you really don't know who they are. Whereas here, I've met more people within the first week of when we moved in here a couple of years ago. And so there's that whole of community.
I think that, yeah, if I could just share for a moment, like, we've just been through a pandemic, right? We've been through a pretty challenging season, the whole world from that perspective, in that COVID didn't pick and choose where it went. And I think a lot of communities are fractured right now from that relational, social aspect. Neighbors, friends, within families. There's been a lot of sort of polarizing ideas and thoughts and whatnot. And we all know it. I think everybody hearing these words, like, you get it. I think, Eric, you just reminded me of the fact that, like, some of these relational things, the neighboring, right, the loving your neighbor, caring and helping, and that community stuff, which I think is what makes Canada special, is what makes places like Norfolk County special. If you sense that you've lost that, we need to get it back. We need to maybe move on from some of the estranged relationships we've maybe had with people. We need to maybe open up lines of communication, talk, maybe even seek forgiveness, right? Maybe you've wronged or hurt someone. Maybe you're thinking about things in hindsight, and because, right, a community like this is great when everyone's contributing, everyone's sharing, everyone's helping, everyone's giving. And I want to encourage our listeners to be like, how has the pandemic impacted you? And, like, what, like, let's move forward in that, because a guy like Eric here, you're telling us, like, these are some of the great things about the small town, the countryside, the rural community. Some of that stuff you don't get in the more urban areas. Like, you've lived on the street for dozens of years and you barely know anyone that lives right around you. And these are some of the things that make our communities great. So, I don't know how the listener, for you, how you would apply that specifically in your life, but it's just a reminder to say, like, these are some of the things that make our county great. And I think that make our county thrive and make people like us have great childhoods and teenage years and whatnot. And so let's keep giving, let's keep helping, and let's move forward, and let's maybe even restore a relationship with those living on our street, living within our family communities and whatnot as well. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to add a comment to that. I just wanted to interject that for the sake of the listener. And so thanks, Eric, for sharing with us, why you think Norfolk County is a great place for you to call home. Eric, like, what's coming up next for you? What sort of unordinary pursuits may lay ahead for you?
Oh, just more fun runs, events that I'll be participating in, and then some events that I'm looking to put together. As you'd hinted, I'm working on a couple different ideas in the Norfolk area, and then working on a couple other events outside of the area, but just as exciting. drivable from Norfolk. But that's pretty. I'm trying to keep 2023 a little bit more quiet than 2022. There's a lot kind of going on for me between Canada Man. I had another race a month later in Colorado. So it's been a big year athletic wise. So next year is going to be a little quieter.
Awesome. Eric, I want to give each of our guests an opportunity to think back to your life, and as an unordinary person that you are, with respect to some of your athletic accomplishments, your drive, your businesses, and what you do. There's a lot of people along the way that have been part of your community that have led to you, being the person you are and achieving the things that you've done. Who are some of those people? And they likely won't be Norfolk County people, but, it could be institutions like, school system or church, or it could be a faith or something like that. It could be clubs or groups that you've been a part of. It could be coaches or mentors or teachers. Like, as you think about, like, who are some of those people that have, made an investment in your life that paid off and helped you be successful in the things that you're doing today?
The big one is my wife. Huge supporter since day one, since I was heckling her in the back of that spin class. And she was thinking, my gosh, he's absolutely gorgeous. I have to meet that funny man. But she's being supported as long as nothing kind of was going to fall apart. I pretty much had free range over my life and being able to make the choices and do what I needed. So that's been the biggest one. Family has been a big one as well. It's, there's encouragement, which has been really good. And then as I kind of grew through the sport and kind of got more involved, all those friends, they either allowed me to help work with them in a coaching capacity or learn from them, or they could be a soundboard, the encouragement. So, I had that 3 different clubs that I belonged to in the Toronto area. But even down here through the North Shore Athletics and different groups and people down here, it's always just those little, pokes from people. And, and I mean that in a nice way, not in a, little bratty sister kind of poking and irritating, but more of an encouragement way. Spurring you
there
on.
We go. Yeah. That's actually a biblical a verse from the Bible. It talks about the church is to gather together in order to spur one another on to love and to good works. And so anyway, I like that picture of spurring, that gentle prodding, right, when we need it, because we're not always in peak fitness. We're not always healthy. We're not always, motivated and whatnot. So that's awesome.
The mind can wander. My mind can wander and just kind of, go into that whole squirrel mode. And so it's nice to have those people kind of bring you back so you can refocus and kind of continue down the path that whatever that's going to look like.
Awesome. Well, Eric, it's awesome to have you as a guest here on the show. It's cool to have gotten to know you and be your friend. And it's awesome to have a guy who I can text and be like, hey, are you going for a run today? And usually you are, and usually you let me tag along. And it's great to have a community to do that with together. Eric Darcy, you are an unordinary man, and that's why we had you on the show today. Congratulations for being so unordinary.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What a compliment,
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
right on. So blessings on your journey ahead. And if those of you listening want to get in contact with Eric, he's a great guy who could bridge you into fitness kind of lifestyle and activity. He would be a good guy to connect with. In the show description, you'll find some ways that you can connect with him and contact him for further information. Eric, glad you're here in Port Dover, Ontario. Glad to have you here as a friend, and blessings in the journey ahead.
Perfect. And you won't be, I won't be leaving anytime soon.
This episode of Norfolk Unordinary is brought to you by Coco Cabana Chocolate Fudge Gourmet Cafe. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram, 16 Walker Street, Port Dover, Ontario.